All right, welcome to the Underdog Ecom podcast, where two ecom brand founders are figuring out in real time.
Yeah, we're not here to preach. We're here in the thick of it, making mistakes, testing all sorts of ideas, and really sharing the journey of how we've been growing these brands from day zero. Hopefully you learn a little bit, perhaps come away with some ideas that save you time and money. And so if you're tired of the same glittery D2C advice from those 9-figure gurus, you're here in the right place.
Let's get into it. Okay, welcome to episode 8. This one's going to be a fun one. Dave and I want to chat quite a bit about, this is a recommendation from somebody on X, Twitter. Shout out to Dennis. But this was a bit about kind of sourcing, supply chain, how someone gets started with that, how we got started with that, I guess. And also on the design side of things, and how you kind of start to design products when maybe you've got a really small or a non-existent, in our case, team. So yeah, let's start off with a bit, I think, with sourcing, I guess. Or maybe we start off with design. Let's start with design, because I think that's probably the starting point, really. I am really, because obviously you do a lot of design. I mean, you bring out products like a lot. So I want to hear about like how you thought about doing this, and sort of maybe whether it's leveraging freelancers at some point in the process, or how the ideas start, and then how you get that to the point where, you know, a supplier understands what it is you're looking for.
Yeah, this changes a lot category to category. So if anyone doesn't know, I run a little apparel company. And so a lot of my stuff over the last couple of years, it's been like a lot of t-shirts and sweatshirts. And in the past, I've leveraged independent designers to bring my ideas to life. Like I'll do some designs, I'll hire them to say, I'll give them a sketch that's like, here, take this national park design or whatever, turn it into something super cool. And I've done that and printed it on t-shirts and sweatshirts. I've been evolving the brand a little bit, which I've talked about before, into less just like copious amounts of graphic designs on t-shirts and sweatshirts into more of like kind of classic apparel, I guess. I don't know, like sweatshirts and that sort of thing. And I want to evolve the brand a little bit more into less graphic designs and more product development kind of stuff. And so that is just kind of where I'm sitting right now. But in the past, it was a lot of hiring designers to finish off ideas. It gets expensive, though, to do that, especially if you're doing smaller drops and doing limited quantities and then moving on to the next design. Like you can, and I would always try and hire designers near me in my area, because I like the phrase designed in Seattle or designed in the Northwest, and kind of keeping core to the brand, being very local and niche. But also, my area of the USA is super expensive in terms of cost of living. If not the world, it's probably top 10. And so that was very expensive, and that just adds up really quickly. And so that's part of the reason why I've evolved my design process into more product development rather than like take this design and put it on a graphic tee. And so that's kind of where I sit with design. Like I'll have mood boards and I'll have inspiration. I'll collect a lot of inspiration. I'll collect products from other companies. This is my R&D shed, and I've got like 15 fleeces over there that I use to look at and reference, and sometimes send to the factory to replicate parts of, because I'm working on some lighter weight fleeces right now. And so that's part of the process, and it just comes from kind of being knowledgeable in the space too. Like I think that you kind of have to be interested in, so I'm really interested in jackets, have always been. So that's like one of my stronger product categories, is because I know all the different brands, I know all the little details, like that sort of thing. And you can learn that for sure, and you can study things and get better at it. But I do think that it's to get the maximum ROI in a certain area is like if you're like, hey, former tennis player kind of thing, working on tennis bags, to have that sort of intrinsic knowledge in that space. I think that answers.
That does, yeah. What I was wondering about is, so you talk about design, like in terms of the graphics and stuff, and like how that's obviously more intensive in terms of getting those designs done. But even with product design, is it more? I'm interested also for myself, because this, I think, enters into how maybe I've tried to do it. But do you work like a lot more with the factories or like the suppliers themselves when it comes to product design, or are you still doing a lot of like initial designs yourself before anything goes to them, just for sampling and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm definitely not an expert in this realm, and I'm learning it over the last year or two. But basically, my process has been collect the references for different jackets, and then design out something that is the jacket that I want, and kind of point to references on the other products. That's like, hey, I want, I want some snap buttons from the Patagonia Chinchilla snap tee fleece pullover, or like I want this sort of thing from this jacket, and referencing those little bits of it. And I pretty much always, I don't think I've started the other way where you start with a product and then customize it. It's pretty much always kind of been from scratch, but I pretty much will say like, hey, let's take this idea. And right now I'm not going crazy high into the customization realm because I want to focus on sort of the basics and walk before I can run. And I have many, many ideas down the road to make things even better, but I'm trying to just try and do bottom line and then work my way and consistently improve over time. That 1% incremental improvement, like you talked about in the last episode, that was good. And that's kind of where I'm sitting right now is, so that's how I'm viewing it in my design process.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people think that a design has to start from scratch. And I think that that's not actually the case. A lot of the stuff I've done had to start somewhere, has to start, especially if you're new to a category. I mean, you have to start with what's out there. And I think there's nothing wrong with buying samples, and like buying products, seeing what you like about something. It's also much easier from a communication perspective, like you said, with when you're working with a supplier. Sometimes it'd be like you say you want something, they say, "Oh no, that's not possible," and you say, "Well, it is because this product has it." You ship it over to them, like, "Oh yeah, okay," you sort of thing.
That's how they did
and
that.
So so I get that a lot. And or sometimes you just can't articulate what you want exactly because maybe, even I've had with designers I've worked with in the past, where their designs or they're even like their very technical designs, when you go to a supplier, they're like, yeah, but what, how does that actually work in terms of, what materials are you wanting for this? And then you show them an example, like, oh, that's what you're thinking. So I think that helps a lot as well, with like actual products and building almost like a shed full of like a shed mood board sort of thing. Full of products.
Yeah. And I haven't been, I'm not like a classically trained product designer, so I don't have like super robust tech packs or anything like that. Like, I know that there's definitely, that's a whole profession. People do that and they design out tech packs and they have every single detail laid out. And I am not to that point in my design journey. And so it is more back and forth. It's not as great as taking a tech pack and building it from scratch, but that's been my process, is to kind of hodgepodge things together and customize and take reference points.
Yeah, I think what I've tried to do as well is, because I mean, I'm not a technical designer either, and like by any stretch of the imagination, like I knew nothing about design, textiles, anything. But in some ways I think it's nice because you come at it at a fresh angle, and maybe you're not overly technical about things at the beginning, which kind of helps move forward in other areas. But I think what I've tried to do a lot is leverage our suppliers in terms of from a design perspective. So I go out, and I go out to Hong Kong, where some of our bags are manufactured, probably now coming up to like 3 times a year, and it's expensive.
Awesome.
But it is expensive to do. But it's in a week I've got, they give me ideas that like of things that they're starting to see work well. I can start to see that they can drop tech packs in a day, or at least like CAD designs they can do. And so I can say like, I can bring something with me. I can bring loads of stuff with me and say, this is what I was thinking, and we can literally sample it out by the end of the day, at least a very initial sample with kind of like stock fabrics and things like that. So I would say one thing I think that I've learned is just leveraging that. I worked with a designer at the beginning, and most of the designers are charging, at least in my industry, around, at least in pounds, £700-800 a day. That's like $1,000 a day.
Wow.
And little gets done in a day. So we're talking about like 10 days worth of work. So suddenly you're literally like 10 grand like to get from start to a tech pack, which you may not ever use. So it's very expensive. And I think, and I can understand these people have got like amazing experience and they can do some really cool stuff. And I think there is benefit there. But from our
Mm-hmm.
perspective, I think what a lot of people think when they're starting a brand is that they either need to access unbelievable design skills, or they need
Mm-hmm.
to have it already. And I think that actually a lot of the time your suppliers will work with you,
Mm-hmm.
because especially if you've got a relationship building with them, it makes sense for them to help, design out some stuff or sample up some stuff quickly, even if they haven't got a proper tech pack to work with, because it actually sometimes speeds up the process, and you can get an order through faster for them as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I think that there's the power of the internet is pretty wild, and the ability to go onto like Alibaba, for example, and kind of sort through factories and
Yeah.
find different people to make different things. And there's so many different custom products on there, and you can start small and kind of build your way up, I think, a lot of times. And you can also buy tech packs there's like hundreds of them on Etsy for different things.
Yeah.
And so it's I feel like nowadays there's action is just so easy. It's like you just take action, improve it, and then take another action. And in the early days of starting the brand, like I wish I would have known a lot of these things back then, because there was a couple of years where I was making custom products from like a third party company based in the US, and they were really awesome and really cool, but also they were basically charging me wholesale prices. So then I couldn't wholesale price my things to people because that middle person was taking a huge cut. And by cutting them out and going straight to the factory or even just a trade person, enormous savings. So it's crazy to think about that. Like the years that I spent getting hats made and sourcing blanks are just like all of these different steps that someone was taking a little cut, little cut, little cut. And just by going direct, you can save so much time in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are scared about that, thinking that they're going to get bad quality, or but I did a similar thing actually when I first started Cancha. There was like a
Mm,
sourcing company in the US who
mm,
said, like, we have people on the ground in Vietnam and China and all these places who can like check quality control. We can help you with sourcing materials. That they were charging like a premium on top, and then of course they
mhm,
were speaking to suppliers, meaning I had no relationship with the suppliers, and it just
mhm,
completely didn't work, the way I'd hoped. And I kind of started to just try and do it myself. And it's a scary thing at the beginning, thinking like talking to a supplier on your own who you don't know,
mhm.
even if unless somebody I think that's another where network comes into it as well. People like recommending um,
Oh yeah,
the right
yeah,
suppliers. I think we're getting more into suppliers now, but which is another part we want to talk about. But
yeah.
I think trade shows are actually really important when you're starting. I think people
Yeah.
think about trade shows in terms of selling, but I think just in terms of understanding the industry you're in and the people that are there, and they can,
Mhm,
even if you like, people can make recommendations for a certain factory or even just like a certain supplier for us, we have like maybe 60, 70 components in a bag. So like it might be a certain buckle that I really like, or just inspiration, and you can go there and you can see, going back to design, you can see what some brands are bringing out next, and you think, I
mhm,
really like that. I'd love to incorporate that. And so it's very sort of cutting edge what you're seeing.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, there's so many pieces to the puzzle. It's like I feel like, that's what makes ecom so hard, but also so fun is you go from like what buckle do we choose on the actual product to what's my landing page copy on the website, and it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of the brand, but so
Yeah,
many
it's like you
pieces.
have two different parts of the brain as well, because you have to get
Yeah.
hyper technical when you're actually talking about a certain component or something when you're talking to the factory. But then you realize if you use that language with a customer, they can have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. And you have to like change tact and like talk about, think about from the customer's perspective how they're viewing the product. And you have to keep going back and
Mhm.
forward between like technical and like brand facing, and keep going back and forward.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So much. Um, I think that covers a lot of design.
Yeah.
Your bags are really interesting because I feel like it's a lot more product dev, which I've been digging into a little bit more, which is pretty cool. And like, how did you find some of your? I don't know if we want to get too much into suppliers, but like, that was me giving me a question is like, how did you find your original suppliers, or like, has that changed over the years and that sort of thing?
Yeah. With my our suppliers, the way it worked actually is I started looking for the individual components, like the actual fabric I wanted for the bag, which was basically they were put in touch with me by one of the initial designers I was working with at the beginning for one of the initial bags, because they already had those, because they'd been ordering samples of fabric to prototype out stuff for other people. So I got in touch with them, and they then put me in touch with the factory that they were working with, and they said, I think this will work really well for you because this guy knows the American market quite well, but also they do like Kickstarter campaigns, do smaller batch stuff. You're not going to be doing massive volumes, so at the beginning anyway. So why don't you guys set up a chat? And so there's like I said, I think I've said this once before. There's like a trade show in Europe called ISPO, which is like in sports and outdoors, like outdoor retailer, huge. And I met them there because I didn't have the money or to fly out to Asia, and I thought, well, I'll try and meet them out there halfway, and that's where I got a lot of inspiration for other things I was seeing out there. I was just like in awe of some of the products that were coming out from other brands like Patagonia, North Face, all these brands, and that's where I met them. So yeah, I think they took a chance on me, and I think this is what you got to hope for. I think is they'll take a chance on you because even over the last 4 years, like I think in some ways I've been supportive to them, but I've also been terrible in the sense that everything's been up and down with the business, and they've rode that wave with me. Even and so we're not their biggest customer by any chance, but obviously we do make it difficult for them sometimes, and I'm aware of that. So I think luckily I've stuck with the same supplier for at least for like the product line we're doing at the moment, because of the fact that and material suppliers have changed a lot, but they're like assembly has stayed the same because they've just been so supportive from a design prototyping perspective, and so that's kind of the way I've done it. But I think it is important. I think at least in my experience, I would say maybe start with, at least, I don't know if this is the right advice, but I think from my perspective, I started with the materials and it ended up working out because they had the contacts further up the chain. But I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to do it.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on what you're making. I feel like apparel is a little bit more like general, where it's like, I think referrals, like you said earlier, like referrals and references from people that are in the industry. That's where I've made a lot of good supplier contacts. Actually, the best supplier contacts have just been from talking to other people that are doing similar things and having their recommendations. And there's been a couple suppliers I've worked with for the most part of the last couple of years, last 2-ish years probably, which has been awesome. And I do remember MLQs being daunting in the beginning, looking at sort of the custom product development route, and samples are still kind of expensive until you get to the point, I think, where you're ordering lots and lots and they don't charge you for sample. Then that's lovely. But like at my level with some of my suppliers, it definitely still costs for a sample. And that can add up. Like you don't want to have just endless samples, but you also want to test things. And I go through several iterations oftentimes when I'm sampling things, where it's like, oh, let's take this hat and change this thing and this thing. And the first round of my shorts that are coming out this year went through several iterations and went through at least 2. I'm in the second round right now. And same with my fleece jacket. It took me like 6 months of different iterations to go through and really like nail all the different parts of it. And I think part of that is, like we were saying earlier, a result of not having a super technical tech pack and more just kind of flying by references and not being a classically trained designer. I'm sure a lot of those details would be nailed if I hired a classically trained designer to dig in and like build a super robust tech pack. But that's kind of where I'm at. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think one thing I was going to say about that is, in terms of the sampling, I think I've been lucky in that I don't generally get charged for samples, which is, but I do get charged for the shipping, and the shipping is, FedExing a bag over is like $100, $100 a go. And so that's kind of one of the reasons I go out frequently, is because I think, well, a flight's going to cost me like $800. That's like 3 samples. I might as well just get out there and move through the process quicker. And we still do get samples sent probably every month. But it does. I mean, just because, I say it sounds like a lot every month, but I mean, if you've got one product and you go through 3 or 4 samples, I mean, that's like 3 or 4 months worth, or depending on how frequent we can get through samples. So sometimes you get 2 or 3 samples in a month. Sometimes it takes longer depending on what we're changing. But I think, it is expensive. But I still think it's probably cheaper than, and also a bit more iterative than like going full on with design, tech packs, all this sort of stuff, only to find that you're going to change half of that later. And I think one thing I would say as well is, I think customers are massively important in this process, because especially when you're starting out,
Yeah.
if you're able to get volumes not too high, you can quickly enough iterate on what customers are telling you. At least I found that in terms of, we get, or sometimes we've removed something and the customer's like, why did you remove that? I think we'll go, got to put that back now. So I think that's a really helpful process as well.
Yeah, the customer feedback aspect is huge. And I think one thing that should be underlined a lot more is visiting those suppliers in person, like building those relationships. And you've talked about it a little bit, and supplier relationships are just so important and so key. And that's definitely a good way to go. We had, what was it? It was like, I was curious to hear, have there been any like small design tweaks that have been really impactful on your bags or packaging or anything like that?
Well, I was going to get into packaging because I think packaging is not talked about enough, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think with small tweaks, I would say it goes back to what I was saying in terms of customers often tell you small tweaks that make a big impact to whether a product is like a 5-star product or literally like a 3.5, 4-star product. Just small tweaks, I think, because it just fundamentally affects function. I think at least with us, I think with if you think like a t-shirt, if like say the quality of the threading is that much nicer, people are just going to be like over the moon about that in terms of the feel, in terms of the comfort. And it's just like you've changed one material, you've changed one process, and suddenly it's a massive change for how customers perceive it. So I think they all add up. But I think I'm really interested to know what you do on the packaging side of things, because I've always kind of really struggled with this, because I think with brands our size, custom packaging is really hard to do. And I think there's some interesting things that are happening in the space around trying to make it more accessible. But it's still really hard. I find it extremely hard because our products are massive to ship.
Yeah.
And so if I ship them in boxes, we're talking about like, just a lot of money. And also boxes take up a huge amount of space. I think that's one thing I think I never really realized. I thought I used to like buy boxes and they would just take up half the storage space, even like flat packed. And then if you're shipping, just to like putting a box together that's flat packed doubles your time at least with shipping an item out. So we ship a lot in poly bags, but like recycled sort of mailers basically. And it's not ideal. I'd rather ship in a box, but what I've kind of seen a lot of other brands in our space doing the same, because they're quite big. It cuts down the shipping cost a lot as well, because you get charged by dimensional weight, and also boxes, even if you get charged by static weight, boxes weigh quite a bit. And I've just really focused on terms of like the insert and things like that from packaging perspective, and how we kind of add value there. So even if we're not doing exactly what I'd like to be doing from like an outside packaging perspective, at least making the interior kind of what their experience when they open it better. But I don't know, how have you looked at that?
Nice. I side note on that. I think the polybag move makes a lot of sense in terms of shipping those huge bags, because that would be so expensive. And that's sometimes I get jealous of brands that are shipping like little tiny things that don't cost much and don't weigh much. But then now I'm realizing, a t-shirt's not that bad to ship, a hat's not that bad to ship. Could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
Packaging wise, it's been an evolution. I feel like a couple of years ago I was going down that custom packaging route and wasn't paying enough attention to my margins and my costs and that sort of thing, and wasn't aware enough about the costs of everything that goes into it. And I had even fully designed out a custom box that I wanted to use that was really cool. But then looking at it, it was, like $5 to $7, which would be a huge margin hit. I'm glad I didn't do it. I think I tweeted about it and someone was like, don't do that. I was like, oh, thanks crowd. Thanks for steering me correctly this time. And so what I'm doing right now is what have I done? I think what I've landed on right now is like I actually switched to recycled poly mailers for a lot of my softer goods, because they're so cost effective versus boxes. For a year or so, probably most of last year, I was shipping pretty much everything in boxes because boxes are more recyclable. People can curbside recycle them. I could brand them and did brand them, and I had this cool design on them. And the branding I had done wasn't for all of my size of boxes. You're right about just boxes in general being such a huge thing. Like I am constantly blown away by how many boxes I go through in my warehouse, shipped in, shipped out, just hundreds. It's crazy. And so right now, strategically, I have my branded boxes as the most popular size, 10 by 8 by 6, and then some of my more weird one-off sizes are I hold in smaller quantities just from a cost perspective, like a 10 by 10 by 10, and a few other bigger sizes that I use for wholesale and big orders. And then I've got the poly mailers, and I don't brand the poly mailers yet because the quantities are higher, so I'm just kind of keeping them generic, eco-friendly ones. And then I do custom tape on the boxes, which I think is really, it elevates the brand. And I think you're right about the unboxing experience needs to be pretty strong, but I also think there's too much focus on the unboxing experience. Like,
Yeah.
people, look at the box, think it's cool, and throw it in a recycling bin. And I'm not sure that the extra cost is necessarily worth it to go all out. I did find a pretty cost-effective custom box supplier that's maybe like 20 cents more a box, depending on the size, to make them custom. So it's pretty close to like the Uline prices. And so I've been doing that for like that most popular size, like I was saying. And then also going a little bit all out with branding. I'll use the custom branded tape, although I'm switching away from that for now because my box design has changed into like a 360 topographical map kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
So I think that the branded tape is too busy with it, and so it's a little cost savings. But then I also throw in like a free sticker or temporary tattoo. I've actually got the insert cards right here, which this is
that's evolved quite a bit because I remember
prints.
seeing the first one, like the blue. I think it was blue color, right?
Yeah.
Or was that like a blue outline?
Yep.
So yeah, that's looking really sharp.
Man, to look back at some of the early designs of this card, so bad. And me trying to like mash together different things together in terms of design styles and vibes, and just didn't make sense. But yeah, this actually, the text is too small on this, so this is a misprint. That's why it's on my desk.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I improved a little bit for the next round. This has been here for a couple months, but the inserts I think are huge. I've actually got a pro tip is I've got a QR code to leave a review on the back. And I haven't properly A/B tested whether this works really well, but there's a week when I ran out of these, and I saw the review rate plummet in terms of people leaving a review. So I think it does work quite a bit to leave a review QR code on the back and just talks about the brand and that sort of thing. And I think this is a pretty cost-effective way to convey that branding.
Does that QR code just go to the product page, or do you have like a Junip review page it goes to?
Yeah. It's the Junip leave a review link where they enter their email and then it'll fetch the order.
And then email. That's really good.
Super handy.
Yeah, that's really good. That's a good idea. It's fantastic. Yeah, I think that I'm also really interested where you source your boxes from, because or just packaging. Because one of the reasons is that there's a tennis brand here in the UK who wants to do some stuff in the US, and they've actually reached out to me about basically us fulfilling some of their US orders and storing they sell like tennis rackets and things. So again, big items to ship, but also they probably need to go in boxes and not poly bags because they're potentially could get dinged and stuff. So I that's what they're planning to do, but they've asked me for some suggestions in terms of box suppliers and stuff. And so, yeah, I'm interested to hear where you actually get your boxes from.
Yeah, currently I use Uline just for the generic boxes because it's just so easy to order from them. I've talked to a few local suppliers of boxes, manufacturers, and I'm not using a ton of boxes because most of my orders are poly mailers, and so I haven't actually placed an order with a local box manufacturer, but they're able to match a lot of the Uline prices. It's just Uline's so easy to click through, and the MOQs are a little bit lower, and I'm trying to minimize the amount of stock that I have on hand to maximize cash flow. So Uline's kind of my go-to. I've used Eco Enclosed for their boxes in the past, but they were so expensive, and I'm not sure that I'm not sure the ROI is there for a super eco-friendly cardboard box. But that's what I used like years ago when I was starting out.
Yeah, that's one thing about card boxes as well, is they're just like, it's not the cost in terms of margin, but there's the cash flow perspective as well. Especially if some of these boxes have high MOQs, you're just storing this stuff and you have to just eat that cash for a little while. Yeah,
I definitely made the mistake of ordering custom boxes in big sizes, like the 10 by 10 by 10, which I hardly ever use. I ordered like 100 of them with the custom print on the side, and I regret that because it was like I could have ordered a lot lower MOQ through Uline, and instead of having them sitting in my warehouse for months and months,
we always keep
cash.
Yeah, we always keep like 20 or 30 big boxes, maybe 20 big boxes in stock, because I always feel like if when a retailer like buys something on Fair and suddenly we can't be shipping that in poly mailers because like they've ordered like 5 or 6 bags, you have to suddenly have a box available. I don't want to be waiting to order boxes for that. So I always try and keep a few in stock. But yeah, they do take up a lot of space though, I find. Like unless you flat pack them, but I mean you have to do that. You have to do that because they'll be shipped to you that way. But it's just that's some of the feedback I've had from like the guy I use for shipping is just like the boxes have just been like a time drain for him.
Yeah, the boxes, so many boxes, just boxes in and out, boxes here, boxes there.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's not easy, but I think packaging. Oh, I wanted to ask you about. Have you heard about this? I can't remember the name of the company, but it's like I'm sure you've seen this guy on like X, and he's basically it's like a platform where you can source box suppliers directly, I think, and you can try to look it up. Maybe you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know that one specifically or can't think of it. I've seen people talk about different, like, here's a website that will source from all these different factories. It'll make fully custom boxes. But that always never cost effective when I've looked at that route. So I was gonna say, I looked at it as well. Like, I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. I don't even know. I feel like it doesn't make sense till you hit like a huge amount of volume because it's such a margin hit and margins are so important when you're small.
Yeah, there was there's an app here in the UK and I've always wondered how they make money, but basically they're like a custom box app. They integrate with your fulfillment center and basically they print out, I don't know exactly how it works. They basically have this like packaging that has like QR code, like boxes that have like QR codes on it and all this sort of stuff that kind of incentivizes maybe more sales and reviews and things like that. And they like integrate with the fulfillment centers when a product gets shipped out. It's like a custom QR code for that customer specifically, and it like goes to that customer. So if they scan it, it's like custom for them, and there's like all this sort of stuff. But I always thought like the cost of doing that between the two, like I think it goes through them and then they box it and it goes somewhere. Yeah. I was like, this is like a very niche thing. I don't know exactly who's using this, but I think a lot of people tried to innovate in this space, but it is just tough, I think, because every additional point in the chain just adds a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely thought about adding sort of like a post-purchase video to a QR code on this card that people get in the mail or whatever, or in their order, and just been like, hi, I'm David, thanks for ordering, or something like that. I think that'd be pretty cool. I think there's a lot of little ways that you can sort of spice it up or improve the process when it comes to unboxing, but I would definitely caution any underdogs out there not to go all out because of margins, and I've made that mistake before.
One more thing actually, have you used Postpilot or any of those other kind of apps for like custom?
I've looked at a Postpilot. Yeah, I have. Yeah. They don't make sense at my volume order wise, but I've looked at them and like I might try out one of the platforms in like a year or so.
I think
it does seem interesting.
Yeah, I think that they're like for the marketing side of things in terms of like the campaigns, I'm not so sure it's quite as amazing as it's cracked out to be. Like they talk about like, amazing return on ad spend and stuff, but I think that it's inflated, and I think a lot of it is customers who might have bought anyway. I don't know exactly, but I do wonder, they also offer sort of a handwritten, well, not handwritten, it's actually done by computer, but like looks like a handwritten card that gets sent to the customer when they buy it. So it's like if you're already a fulfillment center where you obviously can't handwrite cards directly to every customer, it's kind of like an interesting thing where the customer will get a card through that looks handwritten that says thanks for your purchase. I've seen a few brands use it. Some have told me they get a good response. Other people say like they're not even heard anyone ever mention it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I've thought about it. I actually, years ago, when I was sending out a lot of sticker orders, I would sketch mountains on the back of the cards, and people told me they loved that. And customer told me recently they still have it up on their fridge or something like that.
Wow, that's great.
So maybe I'll try and figure out how to do that some way at my scale now. But that was a really nice like unboxing experience touch. I think people really liked. Forgot about
train your shipping person to be able to sketch. That's what he needs to do.
Oh gosh, it took me forever. Like my hand got so tired, and I was just doing like a dozen of them or whatever, a couple dozen depending on the week.
Yeah.
Nice.
Right, I think that makes the pod.
I think so. I think we got a little distracted by unboxing, but that's fine. We'll have about supply and that sort of thing, and product design and whatnot. But yeah, I hope you guys liked it. Y'all leave a review, 5 stars. Jack.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for listening, guys. Appreciate it.